Okay, so I'm going to do a deeper dive, this time more in the DMT, and kind of walk through how a token basically gets set up. Um, in a way, this is basically trying to loosely define what the contract is and the construct around what a token is, and it's all based on first come, first serve. So we'll look at it's basically searching data that's on Bitcoin in this particular case, and it has to do with data that is there. So instead of um, basically just choosing some random number, you're saying, hey, when elements exist in the blockchain, we're going to use those blocks as the token, those block numbers. So as you can see, when you come down here, this is on the digital matter theory. It has a defined formal pattern record registration, and it has a name and a pattern, and then the field. And then the field parameters you can see are listed here. So if we go down to 11, which the majority of them are doing, it shows 11 as being the bits field. We go to a query tool. This is jennydata.com, which has been great to use. You can see here, if I look at chains and I look at Bitcoin and I look at blocks, these are all of the data fields that are available. And if I go down, you can see that there's a bits field. So in the case of the NatCats, if I select just some of the items, just to give you a sense of the data that's there, but number is the block height, and that ends up being the block ID that you use to mint, or that will be in the token that you buy. From blocks, where bits equals 3B, and that's the element that's a string that they're using. So it's basically the full definition of the element on the bits. Any blocks that have 3B anywhere in it are considered valid blocks for this collection. Right now there's 8,064. There could be more in the future if 3B appears. So there is actually a potential in the future that there would be more supply, and it will be a bit of a race where someone would have to be looking to find out when the next batch of bits come out. You then can look at get rid of the commas. If you look here in the numbers, these are the blocks. So this represents the ID that you were seeing in the mint JSON. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of go through that sense. When you come into the NATs, NATs can be fungible tokens, so they could be just similar to a BRC token. The hybrid one becomes when you basically start saying, okay, I actually want to associate some art to it. So when we look at the deployment of this, and this we looked at in the other video, so you have the tap, deploy, the inscription ID points back to that element that you've defined, or that someone else may have been inscripted, but that's going to define the set of blocks that are going to be part of this collection. You have your tick, you have the direction, and the dim. These are just based on how you're looking for that data. Defines it all down here in this digital matter theory. You do a search for that. The important one for the PFP style or the art-based one is that it will eventually have an ID, and this ID basically points to a content inscription. In the other video, that was what showed the HTML code or the script. And based on this element and the mint, which has the block, it's basically saying this typically is going to be the block is going to go into this code, and that is what's going to define what you want to render. So if I look at the NatCats, they have a natcats.git book that defines all of their supply and their traits. You can basically see here how it's using the 3B, and it's defining the block height that these two, if we look back at the studio data, these have it, whereas this 124992 does not. So it's not a NatCat. All of the NatCats have been minted out, but this is again what a mint would have been. So tap, DNT mint, the deploy. The only thing that changes for the mint would have been this block number. And it's again, first come, first serve. So you're trying to get in the first time. And once that's done and it's been verified, that's what ends up showing up on the exchanges so that you can sell it like Magic Eden. What it's basically defined here was a bunch of the traits. And you can look at the traits and it's all based on what's happening in that block number. So these are the supply, which I showed you in that other query. And then it's defined like pattern sets. So if the block number contains a 4 and a 0, you get the cigarette. If it contains 420, it gets catnip for the cigarette. If it contains 8888, it gets an alien bow tie. There's 1. So this is how it's defining the rarity. The one thing that I will say about all of these is that this is hand coded. So this giant alien fish with 999, it would be very easy for me to basically go into here and do a search to find where a block number, so where bits equals 3 and number equals or like. It basically makes it relatively easy to be able to go and actually know what block you'd want to be going after. So there is actually the opportunity that you can that founders can basically grab all of the rare ones. So for me, part of it, to be honest, is that you'd want to try and find some that are going to have a rare distribution. So in this case here, I ran it. So I know that like the 82999 is going to be a 1 of 1. So if I was building out a project, I'm not saying that NatCats did this, but if I built out a project and I wanted to kind of work in a nefarious fashion, I could just find out all the ones that are going to be super rare. And because I know when I'm going to deploy it, and then mint all of those to some other wallet. So I would try and find projects that are going to have a fair distribution. Then it talks about like how you would mint NatCats. They've all been minted, but basically this is again what we talked about. You do that inscription text and you basically put this down and you add in your block number. And there's ways that you could do it through Unisat or MScribe to be able to do batch JSON inscriptions. So I just thought it was important to try and just walk through what those collections are like and why they're defined that way. If I have a look at another project, just one sec. If we look at UNAT Pepe, so this one here is based on the element 3DD. And if I go back to the studio and if I change this to 3DD and do a search, go back here. So in this case here, if we look at Magic Eden, if you have a look at the traits, you can see that in this particular project, all of the traits, the team made a conscious decision to try and make them fair. There are some that are more rare, so I'd say the Sig Kobe trait, but the majority of them, there's a pretty fair distribution. There isn't like 1 of 1s or like really small ones. So I would try and find projects that might have a fair distribution. It doesn't necessarily matter, I mean, to be honest, but it's just more the fact that some people could lock up all of the rare supply. So you just want to be careful of that when you're looking at projects. So in here, in this case here, the search was for 3DD, and you can see that there's 2016 supply for that. Potentially, like down the road, if 3DD reappears in future blocks, the supply of the UNATs could go up, but it's it's a little less unlikely for that to happen as quickly. Anyways, I just wanted to break down um, the digital matter theory a little bit more, highlight the fact that you want to be careful of the projects that you're looking at, to understand how it's built, and because it's all human generated, just to be conscious of that.